Good afternoon and welcome to the third in our series of Extraordinary Matters events. These debates are designed to support and inform all of our members as we move through this period of uncertainty. They're just one of the many ways that the MIA is providing business intelligence to help you keep business moving towards a period of business recovery. Of course, we don't know when that recovery period will start. We do know that countries ahead of us in their disease profile are now starting to see a return, and we know that Germany is starting to reopen. I was so pleased to see that the Hilton Berlin opened its doors this week. There will be others as we move forward, but it's unlikely that any of those good news stories will include event venues for many months. On May the 1st, the Government of Ireland published a roadmap for reopening society and business. Their plan is an 18-week, 5-phase plan informed by public health, which includes indoor events reopening during the 5th phase, which is likely to commence on August the 10th. We now know our own government will announce some lifting this week. Whether they go as far as Ireland, we simply don't know. But what we do know is they'll be looking closely at other countries, particularly our neighbours. And what we do know is they're asking for input from our sector. Many of you will have completed the survey we sent out at short notice last week, and I'm sure you will be pleased to hear that the results of this hit the desks of DCMS by the deadline and is now informing them of the ability of our sector to be agile, safe and creative to enable smaller events to commence as soon as the government tells us we can. So we know we can respond at the get-go, but what do the buyers and the bookers think is likely to happen? Are corporates going to be ready and willing to restart their conference programs? Will associations be back with training, AGMs and award dinners? And will professional event organisers be ready to get creative with their clients' annual conference? That's what we're here to discover today. So once again, today, this event is hosted for us by the fabulous Mark Gallen from MG Sales Performance. Apart from being a first-class sales performance trainer, Mark is a wonderful facilitator, and I have no doubt he'll ensure this webinar is enjoyable for us all. Before I hand over to Mark, there's a few housekeeping notes. For this session, please only use the Q&A button for questions. I'll be monitoring these throughout, and I'll be sharing these with the panel. So without further ado, over to you, Mark Gallen.
Hello, everybody. Jane, thank you very much. That's a very kind introduction. So if you were on the first Extraordinary Matters webinar, you'll know that we were talking mainly to venues. So today it's all about the booker and the buyer perspective. So we've got a very interesting panel for you. I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves one at a time. I'm going to start with Purusha. If you would just like to come in, remember 1 minute, Purusha. That's all we have. A little intro, who you are, what do you do, and a little bit about your business, please.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mark. And hello to everybody, wherever you are out there. I'm Purusha Gordon, and I'm the founder and CEO of Zest Global Events. We are a very small event boutique agency specialising in organising events for the business community. And like many of you out there, we're unable to run events at the moment. So we have turned our hand to organising some virtual events on a platform we've created called Motivation in Isolation. And it's all about wellbeing events, which are free out to the whole of our client and supplier community.
Okay, thank you very much, Rachel. That's very succinct and concise. Okay, Karen, I'm going to go to you. You're looking very comfortable on your sofa there. So if you introduce yourself, tell us a bit about your business, please.
Yeah, so I'm Karen Guile and I'm the director owner of To Book. So we've been in the business now for 26 years this year. So we specialise in venue finding and accommodation bookings, including negotiation and contract. So many of you probably know me as I've met you all over numerous events through MIA, etc. So really looking forward to sharing some news and views with you.
That's great. Thank you, Karen. And Amanda, if you'd like, I can quite see you on my screen, but I'm sure you're there.
I'm here. Yeah, I'm Amanda Thurlow. So I'm a member engagement manager for ACCA, Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. So we run events for our members as part of the CPD programme and what we offer for them. So it is a blended approach. So we've been quite lucky in terms of the fact that we do have alternative options for CPD when we've been unable to run events. So we're just now looking at what that will look like going forward and how we'll be able to best support our members through the difficult period and out the other side of it as well.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. We're looking forward to hearing more about that. May I say, nice Zoom background?
Thanks. Give my secrets away.
And Ellis, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ellis Salisbury, Managing Director of Ellis Salisbury Limited. We're a venue finding and event management company operating now into our 31st year. We're involved mainly with meetings, conferences, events, a real cross-section of clients, a real cross-section of sectors. So although we have still 17 staff on the books, we haven't gone through the virtual piece necessarily at the moment, but we're just looking at how we now need to evolve moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Ellis. Okay, so we've got around about 20 questions for our panelists. I've got them into 6 categories. I'm just going to run through those categories so as an audience you know what's coming. We're going to be talking about impact, obviously inquiries and what's going on with those. We're going to be looking at contracts, market confidence, collaboration, and of course, forecasting. So I'm going to kick off. My first question is to all of you. Okay, and if it's okay, Ellis, I'm going to ask you to come in first. So again, I'm just looking here for like a bit of a top line answer. Please don't feel you have to go into a lot of detail, but we're curious about what has been the impact of the pandemic on your business and how are you managing things? Just give us some sound bites, okay?
Sound bites. Yeah, sorry. I mean, it's pretty. Devastating is probably the biggest word. We've just watched the business March, April, May through to September just go boom, 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 fall out the diary.
So that was me.
That's. I think initially the early stages of the lockdown or the pandemic, should I say, we were busy moving, cancelling bookings, postponing bookings. That took a lot of time and a lot of resources. But up until about 3 weeks ago, I mean, to be fair, we still had 2 people employed, 4 people employed up until 3 weeks ago. We are now just myself and Angela looking after the ship. Everybody else has been furloughed.
Okay, listen, sorry to hear that, but thanks for explaining things. Okay, Purusha, would you mind answering the question? Do you need to recap or are you okay with that? Ellie, would you mind unmuting Purusha? Purusha, we can hear you now.
Oh, could you repeat the question? My internet cut out.
Okay. No problem at all. So we just need some top line answers on what's been the impact of the pandemic on your business and how are you managing the situation right now?
Yeah, so same as Ellis really. We have overnight lost all of our events, face-to-face events moving forward. And we're still in contact with clients and we're waiting to see when they want to rebook them. But I think that's kind of pretty unknown for them as well. So I think once we know a bit more from Thursday's briefing from the government, we will know a little bit more about what that looks like for us moving forward. We have, again, like Ellis, furloughed the majority of our staff and hope that we will be able to come back, but it's really unknown. And are we likely to come back with a full team? Probably unlikely, I think, at this stage, but we will do all that we can. In terms of adapting, we have put together a series of virtual events. They're all free, so they're not actually, it's not actually a commercial venture, and it was really to support the well-being of our clients and suppliers and people that we know within the industry by offering a series of well-being events. It is something that we're going to possibly look at how we can take that forward, as I think, moving into the virtual space is something that all of us really need to look more seriously at.
Okay, that's really helpful. I've got another question for you in a moment about building on the virtual event thing. But before I ask that, I'm going to go to Karen. So Karen, again, just give us a quick picture of what's happening in your business and how you're managing.
Yeah, so literally on the 23rd of March, we handed the notice in on our offices, and I was lucky enough for him to negotiate with him to just 1 month's rent in advance, furlough the team. Well, I didn't furlough the team initially, to be fair. So the team all started to work from home, cancelling everything. So May, June, July is our busiest time because we work for one of the examination boards. So that was a bit of a shocker for us. Yeah. So that was a bit of a worry. But yeah, so we've got 3 furloughed, and the staff will come back and work from my house, which is a long time since I've done that. So I don't know how that's going to work.
Okay. Oh, thanks for sharing that with us. So Amanda, obviously you're in a different place to these guys, but give us a little bit of an insight into what's going on in your business, how you're managing things.
Well, obviously we had to look at the events that we already had planned in the calendar. Mainly we were in a phase where we were planning for the autumn, but we've got different teams that have different sort of venue booking requirements, and we've got a professional courses team that had lots of sort of residential courses all booked in, so they've been working really hard to support members that have been calling in to ask questions and rescheduling those events and looking at how we can host them and what we can offer in the meantime as well. So, across the organisation, we've got different channels and content. We've got sort of technical articles, we've got webinars, magazines, and interviews. We're able to interview members that can offer some insight and things like that as well. So we've just been using the opportunity to do a lot of outreach calling and connect with members and make sure that we're supporting them, really. So yeah, in terms of venues, it's just been a case of rescheduling, and that unknown really at the moment is when will that activity restart. We simply don't know, so it's just a bit of a waiting game at the moment.
And I think you sum it up quite nicely. We're a waiting game. We're all in limbo, aren't we, at the moment? Purusha, I'm just going to come back to you if that's okay. I've got a question around, you talked about adapting and why it's not a commercial offering. Are you thinking about remodeling your business, reinventing it? Give us a little bit of an insight, if you're comfortable doing that, about what might the new Zest look like.
Yeah, no, really comfortable to share that. I think, we all need to recognise that while it's a competitive world out there, that, we are entering into uncharted waters. We don't know what we're doing, and I think it's really important that we do try and help and support each other and kind of guide our way through this. It's changing by the day. I don't know what the future looks like for Zest, and I'm trying to figure it out by the day. I do know that having run 4 weeks worth of virtual events, that I really am missing face-to-face events, and I hope in the future that we will be able to continue to do maybe perhaps a hybrid of both virtual and face-to-face events. I think we would be foolish to think that face-to-face events are going to come back overnight, and that does provide big challenges for us as an industry, and we really have to think about how we can work around that. There's lots of talk about hybrid events and that sort of thing. So in terms of us as an agency, we're really looking at the wellbeing space. I think there are so many challenges that corporations have experienced by having had numbers of their workforce on furlough leave or working from home, being isolated for long periods of time. And that means that they are going to have real challenges bringing them back into the workplace. So I think for us, we will continue with the work that we have done virtually in terms of being in the wellbeing space and how we can support our clients with that. But ultimately, I think our area of expertise is in the kind of business corporate events market. And I think we will continue to work with our corporate clients, maybe in a slightly different way, but with the hope that we will be able to build up to those corporate events sometime in the future.
I'll ask some questions about hybrid events and virtual events, but we're going to do that later on. That's very helpful. Okay, Jane, do we have any questions?
Yeah, we've got an early question. Actually, it's for Purusha. You mentioned, Purusha, that you've lost all of your events overnight. Do you mean all? as in months, years, or just for the period up until the end of this year?
Okay, when I say we've lost all of the events, the diary as we had it was wiped out. We have some clients that have contracted some events for October, but they contracted those back in the second or third week of lockdown, with the view that we probably were going to be coming out of this relatively quickly, and without the understanding that there were going to be long-term social distancing measures in place. All of those clients are all on furlough at the moment, and trying to get answers out of people is proving near on impossible. What we do know is that our clients are reevaluating their budgets. As they're bringing people back, they're looking at where they're going to be able to spend and where they're not going to be able to spend. And so I think, yes, we have lost everything overnight. I do think we will see some events come back in there, but I think they will come back in a different way to the way that they were booked before. And so we will talk later, I think, about hybrid events, but I think that is probably what we will see. So yes, in terms of, is there anything on the books going forward? Yes, there are, but I wouldn't hold out much hope that many of those events will go ahead.
Okay, that's very interesting what you say. So I want to move on now and talk about inquiries. And Ellis, I want to come to you. It's interesting comparing what you're saying to, we had a couple of weeks ago, we had Caroline Ball from CCT Venues, and she was saying actually she was seeing a good stream of inquiries coming through, nothing converting, but coming through for the last quarter of the year and for the first quarter of 2021. So Ellis, based on what you've just heard from Purusha there, what are you seeing in terms of inquiries coming through for future events, and what kind of time frame, if you are seeing inquiries, what kind of time frame are they looking at?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I mean, we've been very close to our clients over the last few weeks to try and get an understanding of what it is that they want to do and how they want to do it. And a number of the clients that we work with run events commercially. That is their business. So although they're doing virtual events, if they can monetize them, that is fine. But they also want to get back to running some of their events, because they can't do that virtually. They want to do that face to face. So they want to try and run those events in venues. And we've already got a number of the clients saying to us, we want to run these events. We just need to know when we can run them. So the challenge that
Sorry, you are seeing inquiries come through, new inquiries?
Well, they're not so much new inquiries, it's more inquiries, it's business that we already had on the books that has been moved, postponed. Yeah. So effectively, the events that we had for March, April, May, we've got stuff that is sitting in the diary June, July, but we know that at some point that is going to move. We just don't know when it's going to move to. So in terms of new business, we've had events again that, some events that we've had, it doesn't quite answer your question, Mark, but in terms of events that we've had on the books, what we have noticed, we had a big event for July that is effectively moved to July next year. So some events we've effectively lost this year altogether. Other big international events that we had for June, effectively we were just about to finally pull that one, and that's effectively going to move to June next year. But probably rather than having no event this year and one event next year, we're going to have an event and a half in June next year. So although 2021 looks promising, all that's happened is that we've probably wiped out most of 2020 and been replaced in 2020.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So it's interesting, we're getting a bit of a mixed picture, but it looks like, again, once everyone's on limbo, but you're saying really that there isn't much new kind of business coming through.
We're not really getting, no. It's stuff that has been postponed or rearranged, or events that I think, as Purusha was saying, some events being postponed to the back end of the year, because in the early days of the pandemic, people were pushing things back from March, April to September, October. And although those events are still in the diary, they're only still in the diary because we haven't moved them yet.
I understand. Okay. All right. Thank you, Ellis. Karen, I've got a question here from you. It's just really on international business. So what I'm hearing, and this is just anecdotes, is that international business is probably going to be the last sector to recover. Just tell us, what are you seeing and hearing, and do you think there will be a long recovery for international business? Can you give us a view on that?
Yeah, I mean, one of our clients is completely international in terms of what we book for them, and we were having a conversation last week about how the thoughts were going ahead in their company. And obviously, being a global company, there's travel bans of all different nature, all different nature throughout, and some are bringing them back in June, some of them back in May. But the biggest fear is that the delegates don't actually want to travel. So they don't want to be confined on a plane for 12 hours to come to the UK or to go to Hong Kong or wherever. And one of the things that we're really looking at the moment as well for the global client is what the hotels are going to work towards. So about the whole social distancing, the catering and everything else. And that will help the client and her board to decide how they're going to move forward with that, and how that can help to reassure their travelling delegates that this is going to be a good thing to do. Personally, I mean, we've got 3 global events running in November, 2 in Hong Kong, 1 in Amsterdam. We haven't cancelled them yet. I'd be really surprised if they go ahead. But the feedback from the hotel in terms of what they're going to offer the client while they're there is absolutely amazing. So there's some positives, some negatives.
Elaborate a little bit on what the hotels are offering?
Sorry?
Can you elaborate a little bit on what the hotels
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, there's lots of the normal stuff. There's going to be extra, for all the touch points in the lift buttons and all those are all going to be cleaned every hour and things like that. One of the hotels is going to provide PPE for the guests while they're in the hotel, which is in Hong Kong. They're going to there'll be wipes and sanitizers, not only just in the public areas, meeting spaces, in their bedrooms. There's obviously the disinfectant of everything, so they leave a room. Once they leave the room for a tea, coffee break, they're going back in, they're going to clean the room up, you come back in. And then the majority are saying that comes in terms of catering, it's likely to be 50% of the restaurant's capacity, for maximum to a table, and all tables will be 1.5 meters apart. So,
okay, that's interesting. I want to dig a little bit deeper into that, but later on. So, thank you for that. Jane, do we have any questions?
I've got 2 that have come in, and one that I think probably can relate to international. During this period where uncertainty is the only certain, what would the panel, like to hear from the government in realistic terms with regard to venues and events reopening? And do they think delegates will want to travel?
Okay, that's quite a question.
It is.
So, should we try and address that later on, or do you like the panel to go through that?
We can address it as we move through. And the other, I think also, let's hold the other one that I've got here for later, because it's another big question around diversification of event space.
Okay, we are going to talk about government and public health guidelines in a moment, but I'm just going to move on to contracts. So this is a bit of a hot potato. So it's quite obvious to everybody that the whole industry has been affected by cancellations. It's a ripple effect, isn't it, to everybody? It even affects, obviously, commissions and cash flows for businesses. So we've seen business being postponed into Q4, and it sounds like it's going to be postponed even further. When it comes to contracts, and this is, Karen, I should call your name at the moment, but when it comes to contracts, Karen, can you tell us what maybe you're doing, okay, as a business about this, and do you have a general view about it? Because people are nervous, aren't they, about signing contracts? I'm guessing.
Yeah. So we were really lucky with all the venues that we worked with. One of our clients received cancellation charges, and it was deferred to a later time in the year. That's one of those November events, which may not happen until 2021. So we'll see what happens there. But I think in terms of contracts, yes, this whole thing has to be taken into account, and moving into 2021, this is not going to be Q4 problem and then a 2021 we're all back to normal. International stuff is going to take a lot longer to get back on its feet. And, you know, there's a huge majority of companies, even if they're holding them in the UK, have some international travellers coming in, whether they're speakers or whether they're delegates. You know, they're not all UK based. So I think, yeah, we've got that to look at in terms of when we're looking at T's and C's on contracts, you know, signing a contract and then 6 months into it, pandemic wave 2 comes in and all our clients are charged. We've got to do something to protect the client's money as well as the hotel, and make it very, very clear about how that's going to work. Because as Alice said, we might not be having any events this year. They may all move to next year, but they are going to move to next year. And if hotels cancel, or delegates cancel, clients cancel, and hotels are going to charge, or venues are going to charge, you know, cancellation charges based on their contractual for a pandemic that nobody has control over, then that's going to have a massive effect in 2021, because people aren't going to have that money anymore, or they're not going to want it, run it in that venue anymore. You know, so for me, make salespeople's jobs in hotels really, really difficult if we don't nail down this contractual agreement about how we're going to move forward.
And do you think we have some kind of industry agreement on this?
Yeah, I think there has to be a sort of agreed service level agreement on that particular thing. So there's something kind of across the board, because obviously that makes it really transparent, really easy for our clients to understand. And then, you know, we all have relationships with our clients where we know we might need to tweak something. And that's, you know, that's when we're talking earlier about the things that are going on in the hotels. That's one of our things at the moment, is that we need to tweak it so that the client is really happy with what they're getting, and they're feeling assured, and they're feeling like they've got, when they're signing that contract, that the hotel's going to adhere, or the venue's going to adhere to the agreement that we've put in place.
We're talking about revised terms and conditions, especially around cancellation, to make it easier for everybody and more transparent. Because
yeah, absolutely. But you can label that with the whole, you know, second wave pandemic thing. It doesn't, we're not saying it has to be, you know, because the speaker's off sick. It's, you know, it's a big thing, and it's got to relate to this kind of situation.
Okay, interesting what you say about making salespeople's job a lot harder. I can imagine that. Okay, thank you very much. So Amanda, Purusha, this one's coming your way. So Amanda, if you can lead. So if you're this is about event management. If you're managing an event, and Amanda, I don't know whether you are midway through managing anything or planning anything, you know, how are you managing that impact? So if you're thinking, okay, I had an event that I could be running, and I was in the middle of managing it, but now what are you doing to make things better, I guess?
It was just mainly about rescheduling them at the minute and looking what is going to be able to go ahead or not go ahead. And, you know, it's members when they feel ready as well. So we're looking at all those kind of things. And yeah, it's just trying to gather that information from everywhere at the moment to make sure we've got the sort of government guidance, we've got insight for what venues are able to offer and what we can realistically do, and whether that's worthwhile, and how we can lessen any risk that's involved with it as well. And just to kind of relate back to what Karen was saying about contracts and venues a little bit as well, I think one of the challenges that you're kind of waiting to see at the minute as well is if as a result of this, venues need to reduce their capacity, then venues that you had in mind or had already sourced or whatever may no longer be suitable for the events that you were looking to host there. So that again presents another angle to that challenge. So
that's a point you make. Okay, thank you. Purusha, I'm curious, you know, when it comes to event management, are you guys, you explain what you're doing already, but are you thinking, okay, I'm going to have to try and start converting some of these, what would be kind of like, let's call them old-fashioned style events now into maybe a different virtual event? You know, have you got any views on that?
Yes, absolutely. And we've got a number of events that we are talking to our clients about at the moment, which were due to take place in Q3. And now there are many concerns that I'm sure most people won't be surprised to hear, but clients are saying, well, hang on a second, if we hold these events in person, are attendees going to want to come because people have their own health issues that they may not want to attend these face-to-face events? What challenges are we going to have? And how can we overcome those? And so I know I've spoken already about hybrid events, but I think this is going to be this is actually going to be something that's going to be seen more and more moving forward. So I think as an industry, I think it's really important that the agency community doesn't switch entirely from face-to-face events to virtual events, because that does not support the hotel and venue market. And I think we recognise that whilst the venues are going to have to make lots of adjustments to adhere to social distancing measures, and their capacities perhaps will be chopped in half in terms of the numbers that they can accommodate in restaurants and conference rooms, etc. I think we are really going to have to work very hard to re-educate our clients about what is possible. And that, first of all, we have to re-educate ourselves. So I think we do have a responsibility to try and keep this industry moving forward, because there is every danger that people won't travel in from overseas for these events anymore. They may dial in, and we have to work out, is it possible to stream parts of those events while some of it is live and face-to-face? And so I think, yeah, and to talk, to move on from what Karen was saying about the contracts as well, I do think that we really do have to think about the venues as well. We have to make sure that the venues in their contracts and things like that, they are also being taken care of, and that we're not just allowing all the flexibility for our clients, because otherwise our venues can't survive as well. And they've already done a great job of being really supportive with cancelled contracts, etc.
You know what, you've made some really good points there, and I want to dig in again into hybrid. I'm just going to go to Jane for a moment, who's waving at me. I think we've got some questions.
Yeah, I've got a lot of questions coming in around cancellations. Karen, they're all directed at you at the moment, but actually it relates to all of you. So what's the view of the panel on cancellations that are around delegate numbers rather than COVID? So COVID causing a drop-off in delegate numbers. There's someone else that's saying that they feel that at the moment it's very one-sided and agents expect the venues to take the hit. I'd like perhaps a bit of a debate around that. Just to sort of put you in the picture, the MIA have just paid a retainer to a lawyer to work on a COVID clause that we're going to ask everyone to put into their venue contracts. So there is a standard across the industry, and we want it to be fair to everyone. So actually this information will help inform that, if you could be as open as you possibly can on it.
Okay, so Karen, do you want to come back on some of those points?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if the the client signs a contract and it's to do with delegate numbers or any of the other usual things that happen, then that's a case of the hotel or the venue and the agent or the client to negotiate out with there and then, whether it's a standard cancellation and the client accepts, or whether there's room for manoeuvre depending on what the event is. My sort of point is as Jane said, there needs to be something within the contract about COVID-19, because we just don't know if there's going to be a second wave, and we don't know. It's very uncertain. We don't want to not give the hotels or the venues any business and just say no, client's not going to do anything, because we all want the business to move forward and grow and take momentum. But equally, there has to be flexibility on both sides about what they're doing. I think a lot of the meetings that are going to come through initially are going to be really quite small, because people are going to want to test and see how these venues are coping and what the processes are in that, in terms of like check-in, in terms of catering, in terms of social distancing, how big that room has to be. And therefore, the hotel has to make a charge for a room that would normally take 100 capacity that now is only going to seat maybe 40, 45. It's all that kind of thing, how we're understanding pricing and all those things. And it's just literally about being really transparent about that particular code within the contract. It's all about that, not about anything else. We're not asking hotels to be flexible on absolutely everything.
Okay, you make some good points. And I'm sensing a little bit of tension where, I mean, going back to the last webinar we had, people were talking about sharing the risk, you know, between venues and bookers and agents. And, you know, the pricing is going to be a very interesting point. I mean, Ellison's going to bring you in quickly. Do you have anything you want to add in to what Karen said, especially around the point about sharing risk? You know, someone said, well, about why should the venues take the hit?
Well, we're already sharing the risk, because if a venue takes the hit and doesn't charge a cancellation to the client, and as agents, if we're working on the commission model, we don't earn a thing. So, you know, we're taking our share of the risk by not earning any money. So, but I understand I understand the question. I think moving forward, we as agents are going to have to take a far more proactive role in the relationship with both the client and the venues, probably more so than maybe we've done in the past. And we're literally going to have to hold everybody's hand in the relation to make sure that the client's being fair, the venue's being fair, but also to collaborate more to make sure that the end result works for everybody. I mean, it hasn't really been one-sided, but historically, prior to COVID, you know, booking a venue could tend to become a little bit process-driven.
Yes.
Where I think moving forward, processing is effectively gone out of the window. And also, I know I'm probably moving off tangent a little bit, but in terms of the skill set within the agencies is going to have to change as well. So there's going to be different demands of us, and I think different requirements for us to survive as an industry. Because if people aren't booking hotels, or as Karen was saying, you know, the events that we're booking into hotels are going to be smaller. Yes, you know, the venues might be charging them more, the clients more money for the space, but that also equates to less income to us from a commission perspective.
Yeah, you make a lot of good points there, Ellis. Thank you very much. I'm going to move to market confidence. Before I do that, Jane, are we okay? We've got no more questions around this area?
No, I mean, there's a lot of questions around contracts, but I think we've answered as much as we can at this stage.
Okay, so let's move on to market confidence. So you all know, well, I don't know if you know, but there was an MIA survey that went out last week looking at market confidence. I'm just going to try and summarize that, give you some context for the questions that are coming. So Ellis and Amanda, this question will be coming your way. But I'm going to give you the perspective of venues, first of all. So the majority of venues through the survey are saying, yes, we can operate with social distancing. And that's as it stands at the moment, which I'm assuming is the 2-meter rule that the government have put in place. But, you know, we all know that if venues are operating on those social distancing restrictions, it's going to impact massively on capacity. And some venues are saying, you know what, that's not going to be feasible for us. That means we won't even break even with those restrictions. And there needs to be more support from government. So that is what venues are saying. Now, talking to you, Ellis and Amanda, you know, it looks like the government are predicting that we're going to have social distancing restrictions in until the end of the year. Okay, so Ellis, as a booker, as an agent, is that providing you with confidence, or does that make you concerned?
Confidence is the wrong word, Mark. I think it provides us with a bit of clarity, but it certainly doesn't give us confidence, because I think that you know, as much as the venues are trying hard and marking things out and looking at how they can run events with fewer numbers and, you know, perspex screens around tables and all the rest of it, I'm struggling to see how that's going to work in practice. I think where, you know, a client, depending on the nature of the event, if it's a corporate running an event, that's one issue. If, like a number of our clients, they're running an event for commercial gain, you know, they're going to be looking at that from a monetization point of view. Can they run the event profitably with half as many people as they'd originally planned. They might say, you know what, we won't run the event in a hotel or venue, or they might turn it on its head and say, you know what, we can run it with fewer numbers because we're probably going to get fewer numbers anyway at 10. Let's look at operating a hybrid model where they actually get a greater engagement on the event by doing the live and the virtual. You know, which is great for the success of the event potentially. The losers in that environment are going to potentially be the venue and ourselves from an income perspective.
Okay, fair enough. Amanda, can I bring you in on that? So, you know, again, you know, when you're thinking, oh yeah, social distancing is going to be in place in venues, as a booker, is that giving you confidence, or is that bringing more concerns?
Yeah, I think I was just talking to a colleague about it earlier, and it's a twofold thing, and it's that new normal situation again, isn't it? Because it depends how that pans out and how public confidence pans out, because you want to instill that confidence and make sure everything's done, but also if you can go in too heavy-handed with all of the measures that are in place, and sort of then you don't want to sort of make it a unsettling environment either as well. So and there's all those challenges around if sort of the measures that are being put in place as well, how or are they going to interfere with the smooth running of your conference or event? So, you know, if the one venue is offering to bleach all the carpets and mats and things every 2 hours or something like that, but is that going to fit around your planned schedule or that kind of thing? And I think people are going to become more creative in the solutions to events that they offer, whether that is through hybrid or different things. So, for example, I could see maybe it working with something like if you usually bring everybody together in one huge hotel. Now with the technology and the way people are comfortable with it, you could, if you were using a hotel chain, could you split that across different venues within the hotel chain and link up with technology? So it'd be things like that. So you'd need that flexible approach from the venues and things to be working together as well. So in a situation like that, if a franchise or something like that, it makes it a bit trickier. But if venues can work collaboratively, then I think that will help.
I want to talk about collaboration in a moment, and I definitely want to dig in more to technology and hybrid events. Just staying with the point around social distancing, here's another question for you. So some venues, as you can imagine, as I think Karen explained in Hong Kong, some venues are really going for it in terms of like they're working out what it is they should be doing. Let's just focus on the UK for a moment. So here's a question. Should venues now be going, okay, right, we're going to work all this out. You know, we're going to include, and I kind of joke basically, you know, that we're going to include a mask in the DDR and a hand sanitizer, and we're going to put bleach and we're going to spray everything. Should venues be working it out now, or should they be waiting to see what the public health guidelines are from the government? Because that's going to change everything. So do you have a view, Amanda? Do you think, yes, go away and work out and come up with solutions, or should they wait until what the government tells them to do?
I don't think there's any harm in scenario planning in terms of looking at what they can offer. So they're in a place where they are prepared based on what the government does announce. And like I was saying around the new normal as well, if public life is going to change, then people will be expecting those things. You know, as we're going into supermarkets at the minute, all those measures are in place and people have become used to them, and sort of it's the safety net around public confidence as well. So there's the element of what the government announced, but also what helps make the public feel confident. Because if the government, not that they would, but if the government announced tomorrow, fine, go ahead, nothing required, go back to normal, then I don't think people would feel comfortable in that situation. So it's balancing that as well, I think. So
one more quick question for you. So as a booker who's, you know, booking on behalf of an association, what would venues need to do to instill confidence in you around catering breaks?
Catering is tricky. I think Karen already mentioned about sort of sitting on different tables, and we had one venue's already emailed and said they'd be temperature checking their staff as well. So it's just being I think communication is what's going to be at the heart of it all. So whatever they're doing, they need to be communicating that out, and then as an event booker, event planner, we need to then be able to have that to be able to communicate to our attendees and delegates as well, so that they feel comfortable.
Okay, thank you. Jane's trying to get my attention. Thanks, Amanda.
I'm always trying to get someone's attention, Mark. But anyway, there is a question around this social distancing and PPE measures. Obviously, for venues, there's a fairly major financial impact in all of that. If you reduce your capacities by, I think the stats are something like 49% to ensure that social distancing can be adequate, the cost is huge. So what do the panel believe pricing will look like for new inquiries from Q4 onwards?
Okay, thank you very much. So pricing for new inquiries from Q4 onwards. Okay, Purusha, I'm going to give you a bit of airtime. You haven't had much for a while. Do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, sure. I think it's worth remembering that there are plenty of businesses still out there making money right now, and our industry has been really, really hardly hit. And I think when we talked about the contracts and things earlier, it is important that we recognise that if a client is bringing a piece of business to us, it is because they have the financial means to be able to do that. And so I think we have to think sensibly along those lines. And I think there's some questions around split sharing risk and all of that sort of stuff. And I think the risk also has to be shared with the client. If the client wants to take on an event or to run an event, then they have to assume part of that risk. And it's unfair for that to solely lie with the agency or with the venue. In terms of, remind me of your question, sorry, I just got totally distracted.
I'm going to bring Karen and Ellis in as well.
Pricing. Yeah, pricing. Yeah, I would expect pricing to increase. I think there's lots of discussion around pricing within the airlines and the cost of travel increasing, and I would expect that the cost of hotels and venues would actually increase. I think it's unrealistic to think that if the capacities are half in the conference rooms, that the venues are still able to deliver at the same price, and that is, you know, that is challenging. They've got more measures to put in place, more cleaning measures, sanitising products, and, you know, anything else that they want to offer. So I think it's unrealistic for clients to expect that the cost is going to be the same as much as they probably would like it to be.
And that's going to be a tricky conversation, isn't it? Karen, if you just got anything you want to add to what Purusha said?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. There's obviously additional costs to running the hotels and venues after all this. So, but equally, it's still a fine line between what your client's going to be able to pay and what costs there are for the changes that the hotels are making. And there's going to be that little bit of a period in between where this all gets worked out. So, I mean, one of the things I remember when we were, you know, going back a long time ago, a lot of the pricings weren't based on day delegate rates. It was based on room hire and teas and coffees and lunches and the add-ons and stuff. And then we went to DDRs. And I probably figure it will go to DDR plus room hire supplements because of the type of rooms that we're going to have to use. And I think when you're doing it that way, that's an easier way for us to sell to our clients effectively, is that we're using this as a risk measure. We've got this larger room. It is going to be an extra cost, but it is going to be in line with all the safety measurements that we have to adhere to. So yeah, so I just think that there will be...
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm just keeping an eye on the time. I really want to move in and start talking about forecasting. Ellis, I haven't forgotten you, don't worry, okay? But Karen, you made a really interesting point about room hire on top of DDR. Okay, so we've been hearing a lot about virtual events, hybrid events, working around a hub, and about having to re-educate our clients, etc. So, Purusha, here is your moment, okay? All right? Tell us a little bit more about this, because well, what I'm curious about, and I'll come back to the other panelists as well, you know, are you personally getting more inquiries for this type of, you know, hybrid event in terms of, you know, venue finding and event management? And do you think we're going to see an increase in it?
Yes, I do think we're going to see an increase in it. We, at the moment, a lot of our clients, because we're experts in face-to-face events, and so we are having to go through that re-education piece with our clients right now. So where they are coming to us and saying, actually, some of those events that we used to run face-to-face, which were maybe for, you know, training courses for 5, 10, 15 people, we're actually going to run those virtually now. And so I think we will see a loss of revenue in that aspect. But then I think those larger events, we are now having to work with them, because they're saying, well, how are we going to run these events? We need to engage our people. We need to connect our people. What are the solutions out there? And so, yes, I think this is the time that we have to look at hybrid events. And I think what Karen was saying about the pricing within venues, absolutely, I think that is going to have to change. And it may be that it does go back to room hire, etc., etc., and just recognise that the budget gets restacked in a different way with the clients. So the budget can remain the same, but, you know, maybe they will have 100 participants that they don't have to pay for travel or flights to attend that event, and they can attend it virtually. And so that money can then be offset in the increased charge of the additional room hire or whatever the charges are, the fluctuations that you know, the venues may need to charge to make it a profitable event. So I do think we're going to see some clients will move solely to virtual events for some really small meetings. Particularly, I think it was, you know, where they used to, you know, all get train tickets into London for a day for 20 people. I think those kind of things will probably just happen over Zoom and other platforms. And then I think there are some really great event management platforms out there that us as the agency community can educate ourselves in, and can really work with clients to actually deliver these hybrid events. So we can encourage clients to not completely move away from the face-to-face events, but to actually merge them and make them hybrid, with a view to hopefully getting them back to face-to-face events in their entirety in the future. I think clients absolutely recognise the value of people coming together face-to-face, and I think we all recognise that, having been in lockdown for so long. So we must remember that that is the desire, that is where we want to end up. And so this hybrid event model will probably be around for some time, but let's all make sure that we talk about hybrid events and not just solely virtual events, because I think virtual events kill our industry.
Sorry, Bruce, an important distinction, isn't it? So to sum up what you're saying, you're really saying is that in terms of large events, we have to, one, start educating ourselves as a business community, one, educating our customers about these. And it sounds like I'm getting a theme that we have to be very creative and really there's a lot more, going back to I think what Karen or Ellis said, a bit more proactive in maybe you said it, in helping the customer understand all the different options that are available. Would you go along with that?
Yes, absolutely. You know, we are experts in organising events, and all that's changed is that we can't do them entirely face-to-face. So we as an industry are incredibly creative and resourceful. And so it's coming together between venues, and it's working out what are you doing at venues? What can you offer? What different things can you do? And I think, again, the point was made earlier about whether or not hotels can gather together. You know, I think hotels are going to become like these communities. They're going to kind of scoop up all the local business more so than they probably have done in the future, in the past. And so it's about those venues then connecting with others to kind of create these bigger events. And so I do think we just need to be creative and collaborative and to share the good stuff that we're doing amongst each other to keep the industry moving.
Okay, so a trend that's just going to be accelerated, basically. All right, thank you. Ellis, I'm going to bring you in quickly. Do you have anything you want to follow up on what Amanda said? Purusha, sorry.
No, I agree. I think, yeah, I mean, I think some of the conversations that we've been having with clients and it's focusing on, I think ultimately boiling down to what is it, what's the objective, what is the message that the clients are looking to put over, and you know, if that can be achieved face to face and it can be achieved virtually, then that's the solution. Rather than thinking, you know, is it going to be a live event? Is it going to be a virtual event? It's more about what's the message first.
Okay.
And then I think, as Purusha was saying, one of the things that we've been doing is spent a lot of time over the last few weeks looking at the various different platforms that are out there to deliver. And I think we've always been very good, and I think a lot of agencies very good at promoting production companies to work with the client on a large event. The principle is exactly the same, where you're working with an organisation who's got a platform to deliver the virtual event, and those virtual events will still need producing. Someone still needs to manage the content on a virtual event, the same as they do with a live event. So from our point of view, we're still able to manage those events in a similar way. Obviously, you're not inviting as many delegates, so there's less logistical work to do, and I hate to try and throw the monetized bit as well. Does that answer?
It does, yeah. Thank you, Jane. I've got some questions. Thank you, Alice.
Go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of questions around this hybrid. I was about to say issue, and that's because some venues are seeing it as an issue. Obviously, there's a big loss in DDR rates for venues, so there's going to have to be some sort of clawback. So that's a part question, but also a question from me. Do you see the venues, would it be smart for the venues to be offering you hybrid events within their own venue so that they can manage the social distancing across the number of rooms?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. Yeah, so just to be clear here, a typical hybrid event is in different locations, but why not have, satisfy people's concerns of social distancing by putting them into separate rooms? Karen, do you have something you want to add? And Amanda, I'll bring you in as well on that one, but Karen first.
Yeah, I mean, I think that could work for some things. Depending on it's dependent on the content of the of the event itself. I mean, if you've got presenters, you're now talking about having multiple presenters in each room, or you're now talking about it all done by video stream, and there isn't the same interaction with bigger groups when you've got that. And I'm only thinking in terms of my own clients, so and how their events run and whether it would work for them. One client probably could make it work, but the others probably couldn't for them. I think, it is a case of having more tools in the box to be able to say, yes, this can happen this way, or it can happen the other way. And so we're, as Alice and everybody have said, we're educating our clients to think slightly differently to get a similar outcome than they would have before we go back to face-to-face. I'm in no doubt that we will not go back to face-to-face. Our clients want to go back to face-to-face. So the minute they feel comfortable doing it, that's what they're going to do. So this is a real temporary measure for a lot of clients. It might turn into a more long-term measure for some, because they'll see different outcomes from it. But as I'm saying, I'm only looking at my clients and what my clients would get out of it. And it would be a very temporary measure.
Thank you. Amanda, can you see yourself and maybe associations booking more hybrid type events?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely something we're thinking about, and I've sort of been talking to our team about it, and we've been saying that we've got, if the event is just a presenter with a PowerPoint hosted in a hotel, that could be a webinar. It doesn't necessarily, it does nothing about it. And I can almost see organisation, because there has been so much reliance on technology at the moment, people's eyes have been open to the capabilities of it and what it can do. I think that companies will embrace it further, and then for events to take place face to face, I could almost see a situation where it's a bit like putting a business case forward for that event to happen. So you've really got to think about, why does that event, what is it about that event that needs it, why can't it be hosted virtually? So that's definitely something that we're going to have to start considering, and then that's where it comes into thinking more creatively about those business models and those event structures and how the design and the experience of it as well. So I think it, like we were saying earlier, it's definitely going to be less of those smaller one person speaking type events, and it just might mean a more complicated approach to how the event's delivered, and we'll need to all work together as an industry to sort of work those out, because we don't know what they'll look like yet, so we're all working it out at the moment. But yeah, I definitely see that change.
Thanks, Matt. Sounds like there's an awful lot that needs to be worked out. Jane, I'm mindful of time. Do you want me to ask a final question, then head for a wrap up?
I've got two final questions, please. One is around educating customers. What are the panel doing to educate their customers that around the venue plight is the best way to phrase it. The experience that the venues are going through, what cancellations have done to them, and how they also need support. So that's one question. Then I've got another one after that, Mark, please.
Okay, all right. So the audience are curious. I'm going to aim this towards Ellis and Karen at the moment. The audience are curious about, are you putting forward the plight, for want of a better word, that the venues are in? Are you explaining to them? And if you are, how are you doing that? Ellis?
Yeah, I mean, I think that at the moment, I think as Purusha said right at the very beginning, a lot of the clients are currently furloughed. So trying to get hold of some of them having sensible conversations is a challenge. There's not, I don't think we've specifically had any kickback from the clients asking how are the venues coping. I think it's something that we are mindful in the way that we're communicating back to the venues if we're having, back to the clients, if we're having to postpone or cancel bookings, or we're you know, clients are saying, well, I know I've moved this event for the third time, but I'm not expecting any cancellation charges, and we're sort of pushing that back to say, well, why? You know, so we're trying to have those open communications with the clients to show that it's not all one-sided. I mean, a lot of the venues have actually been very good in the way that they've handled the cancellations and the postponements, which has almost created a situation with the client where they've gone, well, that's good. We've been able to move our event. We've not had any cancellation charges, so that's okay. I don't think they've necessarily thought about what impact that might have on the venue, and if all of the events cancel, will that venue actually still be operating in 12 months' time?
Okay, so Karen, I've just to build on that. Do you think bookers, the corporate customers out there, do you think they get the situation that, you know, venues are really having a tough time?
Yeah, I think they understand. I mean, because of the nature of the clients that we've got as a whole, there's a common thread through them all, and so they do understand that this is impacting massively on the hotels. In which case, there is going to be some impact back on them in terms of cancellations or costs and things like that. At the moment, in terms of educating the clients, we are so we have a lot of hotels that we repeat business into, and so for those hotels that we're doing that, we're actually going out to them now and saying, you know, how are you going to manage these current or future events that you're going to do? And they're coming back to us, and the idea for us with our clients is that we're going to sit down with those and go, so which are the most important things, other than the common thread of everything, that's going to really encourage you to bring business back into the hotels, so that we can kind of build on that with the clients and the venues. I think it's I think there's so many things going on, and you know, with people being on furlough, I'm quite lucky as the management people in the businesses that I'm working with are still there for me to talk to. And they're very keen to understand where they sit with the hotels and venues and how they can collaboratively work together to come out the other end, because they want to put their business back in. They can't do it at some outrageous cost because the hotel's incurred so many costs or the venue's incurred, so they can't do that. So that's why I was saying there's always going to be this like period where it all sort of settles down and there's a bit of give and take on both sides, and then we'll get back to normal, whatever that'll be. But we'll get back to something where we all know where we sit in terms of pricing and in terms of expectation. That's my hope anyway.
Thanks, Karen. Jane, final question.
Final question. Are the panel hearing anything on the duration of events and their customers? Some of the research from Germany suggests that shorter events may be a key part of restarting the industry in order to reduce the exposure time between participants. Could there be short-term move away from DDRs to a shorter half or part-day meetings?
Okay, thank you. It's probably maybe a little early days to see anything like that, but Purusha, do you have anything you want to add to that? You seeing anything?
That's an interesting piece of research. For me, I don't think duration is key. I think if you're exposed, you're exposed. So will we see a move to half-day meetings? I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know is the answer to that. It's not something that our clients have discussed. I think, yeah, okay. If clients want to get people together, I think they want to make sure that they're getting a return on that. And so it's, can I communicate the messages that I need to within the time that I am allocating? And if that's a half day, then it's a half day. I think if they feel that there's a risk of exposure for people, then I think they probably just wouldn't run the event in the first place.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Amanda, can I bring you in just to know your view? You know, would you think about shortening your events down to half days?
Not something that we've particularly sort of considered at this stage, but again, I guess, you know, as well, I guess people want to see the value in terms of the fact if they have had to travel as well, and it raises the question again, if it is such a short event, is it something that could have been hosted online? So it's just all those questions again about what we've been saying about all the other elements to it, really, is just questioning it and working it out. So as long, you know, it's, but yeah, again, don't know really until we get to that phase, I guess.
Well, I think that kind of sums things up nice, doesn't it? Because we are all feeling perhaps in a little bit of a state of limbo. We just need a little more direction from the government around public health guidelines. But it's interesting listening to you all, because I'm sort of hearing three themes. One is the education, our own education as an industry about how we make things different, how we change things in terms of hybrid events, and the education of our customers. Collaboration, okay, it all sounds like it's going to be the whole inquiry handling process and the customer buying journey is going to look a lot different by the sounds of it. We're going to have to collaborate a lot more. And creativity in terms of figuring out how we make clients' budgets work for everybody in the process, agents, you know, venues, etc. Can I just say, listen, thank you so much, panelists. Purusha, Ellis, Karen, Amanda, I think you've been great. Thank you for answering all my rather clumsy questions. Before I hand over to James, going to give you the final word, I can see people are drifting off, but listen, guys, thank you very much for coming on to the webinar and giving us your time, and thank you for all the questions. Jane, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Absolutely brilliant as usual. I've got three takeaways. One, we absolutely need an industry contract clause that people can use. And as we've already said, we're working on that. Karen, thank you. Great comfort to know that you are absolutely convinced that people will meet again. It is so important to us that we keep that positivity to keep business moving. And I love the idea of room supplements. And that's something we'll look at incorporating into AIM as part of our recommendations. I think it's a really, really good idea. For anyone that's still on, and we've still got 123 at the moment, so they're not drifting away too fast because I'm speaking. I hope we managed to answer all your questions. There was a lot of questions coming in. And for me, I think it was a very valuable session. Panel, we're going to send you another invitation for the next few minutes, just so we can all get together. For me to personally thank you, but thank you anyway, and thank you to everybody out there that's taken the time to watch what we're doing. Okay, goodbye.